You can grow without buying bags of good soil. You can grow without fertilizer. You can grow without buying seed, especially if you have a seed library in your city. It takes more patience to grow without money or supplies, but I'm here to show you it can be done. For the last year, I've been transforming my tiny lot in a trailer park into something like the meadow of my dreams, where I grow edible plants right alongside flowers, sheltering wildlife while providing myself with food and medicine. The goal is to garden using mostly resources I find around me, including letting the weeds work for me. No $500 tomatoes here, just patience, planning, and a lot of crawling around on my hands and knees. If you struggle with stiffness and aching bones like I do, you might not think you can do it. You might be surprised. Some areas of the garden I don't dig in at all. I just cut the lawn down right at ground level. Usually, then I start piling mulch from raking or weeding on top, but not always. In this bed, I wanted to see how well I could grow things just by planting, and if I could turn this area of high foot traffic into ground so soft you could sink into it with zero digging. So, after cutting everything down with my sickle, I started planting seeds right in the compact clay, letting the so-called weeds help me, along with a few root vegetables. A few weeks ago, I noticed it was happening. I was weeding, it hadn't rained in a couple of days, and the ground was dry, but not bone dry, and I was sinking right in. One of my big helpers is the plantain, usually called an invasive species. It's sometimes called white man's footprint due to how it followed us on our path from one coast in North America to the other and how it grows near walking paths. That's because it can handle compact, heavy soil that more delicate plants can't grow in. I can let this work for me. I let the roots stay in place while I weed and only pull off the leaves when I tend to the area, so seedlings can get the light and I can use the leaves for compost and mulch. I can also use the leaves to stop bleeding when I get a little clumsy with my sickle, washing the wound and then crushing a clean leaf until the sap rises up and dabbing it on the bleeding. It's also good for bug bites, and I can use it along with dandelions, yarrow, and wild violets in a skincare cream that I love for soothing the itchies after a long day of gardening with the sun and bugs. Some of the plantain has died back from me pulling the leaves off so much, and those roots decay right where they are and leave nutrient-filled tunnels that help aerate and decompress the soil. I leave some plantain to grow at the edge for my skin cream. A lot of clover grows in the area, and it helps me quite a bit. Clover has a symbiotic relationship with the bacteria in the roots that feed nitrogen from the atmosphere while it returns the favor by feeding the bacteria with sugars. I've heard some debate on whether or not clover can help while it's still growing. The clover uses the nitrogen itself, and some say this means the clover won't help fertilize your soil unless you use it as mulch or compost. Others say the dying back happens as a part of growth, and it will release the nitrogen into the area even while it's alive. So I decided to see how well that worked. Before I started planting this area, it was divided by a low fence to keep dogs from escaping. The half on the right was overgrown with clover and plantain. The half on the left was mostly grass. After I cut it all down, I put in some daikon radish seeds to help break up the clay. Just like the plantain, I only harvested the leaves and eventually let the roots decay in place to lighten the soil. I noticed quickly that the seedlings on the plantain and clover side were visibly larger, with leaves 2 inches longer than the seedlings where it was just grass. This seems to me to support letting the clover remain, though I do trim it and turn it into mulch like I do the plantain, so the seedlings can get some light. I also found some special clover right by the gate with a high rate of mutation. I did dig this one up, every scrap of it I could find, and grew it in plants until it was healthy enough to move back outside. I grow the mother plant here, right by my yarrow, in an older garden bed I've had for a couple of years, still in the patio gardening area. Yarrow is another valuable plant that can often be found growing as a weed. I found mine in a park nearby and transplanted it. It's known for its ability to pull up and retain phosphorus and potassium from the soil, releasing these nutrients into the compost and mulch as it decays. It also, like plantain, stops bleeding and is good for skin care, as well as being good medicine for a wide number of ailments, and pollinators love it. Together, clover and yarrow provide nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. the three numbers every plant food shows on the label. The plants in this bed are the mother plants for many cuttings that I put in various places around my yard, giving my plants better soil and a little luck. Another plant in this bed is wild violet, which can often be found growing under trees probably around your entire neighborhood. It makes a nice living mulch, growing low and shading your soil to prevent evaporation and crowding out the weeds. Sure, it has charming flowers, but it's also edible. It can thicken soups the way okra does, is good as a salad green or a batch of sautéed greens, and can be used in cough syrups and skincare, as well as being a host to a few butterfly species. The sunflowers here have deep roots that can pull up nutrients the rain has pushed down into the soil. It is magnificent at breaking up clay, and when you cut the stalks down, they make excellent compost. They also provide a canopy layer to the garden, shading the more delicate plants from our Midwestern sun when the heat gets to 104 degrees Fahrenheit in the summer. That's 40 degrees Celsius. They also feed pollinators, birds, squirrels, and people. If, like me, your sunflowers don't get large and plump enough for snacking, you can sprout them to top salads. These still fit into the free category because my first packet of seeds was a lovely Christmas gift, and I save my seeds for planting every year. Over the last year, this area has turned from footpath with a little garden square that struggled to support the violets into something where I'm growing healthy marigold, garden sage, oregano, basil, strawberries, and creeping thyme, peas, carrots, and asparagus. The violets are also doing much better. That's what the free gardening looks like with minimum effort and some help from the weeds, but it gets more interesting when we take a look at how the backyard has changed, with a little digging and shaping the ground to capture rainfall. I started by taking my sickle and cutting down all the grass right at ground level. The grass here blocks the light from other plants, and I want the wide variety of seeds in the soil to germinate to add some diversity to my little meadow. I took the rotting lumber from our ancient pile of scrap wood out behind the trailer and moved it against the walls and along the fence, then piled the cut grass over it. I also gathered sticks, including huge broken limbs that fell during storms, and broke them down to add to the mulch and hold it in place. When the rain falls from the roof and down the walls, it will soak in here, and the rotting lumber will hold it. These rows of lumber and mulch aren't heavily planted yet, but they will continue to have mulch piled on top of them, so everything has a little time to break down before I pile dirt on top and start planting. In the meantime, I have a little tree that needed a better home. I wanted an irrigation ditch around it, and the mound you see was started with layers of sticks topped with grass cuttings, and then dirt thrown on from the trench I was starting to dig. By the way, this tree was also free, kind of. I had to eat less meat for it that month because it was bought with food stamps from Walmart. That's how I get some of my food seeds as well. If you don't have food stamps, money for seed, or a seed bank in your city, you do seem to have the internet. Learning more about the native plants in your area and how to use many common lawn weeds is easy on YouTube these days. Start by searching for backyard foraging. Once you find plants you want that aren't in your garden, you can transplant, take cuttings, or take seed and move it in. Anyway, it's an American persimmon that is a native, so it will do fine in my heavy soil and heat, but even better if I can trap the water and encourage it to sink in around the tree rather than run down the slope and into the street. Clay may be hard for roots to penetrate, but it can hold water. Hopefully my irrigation ditch will mean she has lots of water in a reservoir under the surface to help her when the drought comes every year. The water runs from the roof, down the wall, and over a compost trench I dug. The trench was filled with crumbly bones left over from making bone broth and kitchen scraps, then topped with sticks to prevent animals from digging it up, then topped with mulch and dirt from the digging in the ditch. A shallow trench runs in a line in front of the garden bed, and another trench connects it to the circle that I dug around the tree. I figure the trench won't just help the tree, but also the garden beds that lead to the tree, so this area is turning into one big garden bed. The first compost trench grows corn and beets. Another compost trench was dug on one side, where I grow squash, buckwheat, and lamb's quarters. The other side has a hill where I'm only piling on sticks and mulch with no digging, and it wraps around a plastic planter I will eventually turn into a little pond shaded by scarlet runner beans. The hummingbirds that come from my marigolds will like those, and they're another nitrogen fixer. At this point, my backyard is starting to get the tended meadow vibe I've always wanted, complete with lots of habitat and consideration for wildlife. The mound for the tree will eventually be shaped into a fairy castle around the growing plants. The trench or ditch is its moat, and this bridge over the moat is a basking stone for the geckos and garter snakes that live there. To one side, under the growing clover, is a shady spot with a turned-over pot for wandering toads that I hope will move in, and a bird bath they can all share with the insects. The tub and stones in the water are cleaned out regularly, and the stones help insects and small critters get in and out of the water. The hill the tree grows in helps keep this area private, so the wildlife feels safe using it even when I'm out in other areas of the yard, especially the birds that seem to be getting quite used to me. This is the lowest part of the yard where I once had a garden bed and it sunk in over time. I'm using that to my advantage. This north side of the hill will be shaded, and the moisture that gathers there will be great for some more delicate plants to grow later when the ground is ready. For now, I'm using it to bury kitchen scraps. The mulch is pulled back when I mix in compostable things while I look for worms and bugs to feed my pet frog and garter snakes, especially invasive worm species and the slugs which would eat my crops and contain more calcium than the worms for my pets. When I clean out the bird bath, I dump it here, giving the area the moisture it needs to help the scraps break down. Eventually, when this area becomes a garden bed, the bugs get to form a permanent habitat there, food for the critters I'm sheltering nearby. In the meantime, Morty demands her snacks. The area in the furthest part of the yard grows alfalfa, another nitrogen fixer pollinators love. I have one big mother plant ready to scatter her seeds through my lawn later this year, and a small crop of younger plants coming in to fill the area. I come through here on a regular basis and harvest the young tips for salads, soups, and stir-fry. You don't just have to eat the sprouts, but I could also gather the seed and do that if I wished. The broken rocking chair has sticks with lichens growing on them strapped to it. Other decorations will be added in the upcoming months and years. I'm thinking eventually there will be patches of moss strapped to it and a chia pet sitting on it, or maybe just a cat statue. Here's a more recent picture of the entry into the backyard. Like I said, it's starting to look like a meadow. A row of branches against the fence and a strip of blooming clover provides wildlife habitat and pollinator food along a little safe corridor. I make sure to have a very closely trimmed area for the foot traffic so I don't step on wildlife babies as I go about doing my thing, and the area in front of the shed is kept low for the same reason. The geckos and snakes will help me with cutworms and other pests in the soil. I certainly don't want to harm them. Between the clover and branches is an open area of recently planted peas and wild garlic. I found 2 grocery bags full of garlic growing too close to the road to forage, but by removing everything but the bulb and letting it grow a few years, it should be decent to eat. The peas will provide food as the vines crawl the fence, and when they die back, they will give the garlic some nitrogen. Most of the pea family, like my alfalfa, scarlet runner beans, clover, and partridge pea, will do that. Red bud does not, which makes me sad because it has pretty edible flowers. This isn't even the end of the beginning of some of the groundwork I'm laying to make every inch of this land do something more than it was doing, so an entire thriving ecosystem can grow right in the middle of an urban trailer park. I'm growing things along the other side of the house as well as the front and back, but so much of this is work in progress. I'm always changing something. Every day I take pictures, there's always something else to do that day. And wow, I also have a lot of work to do on the blackberry side of the house where there's a vegetable patch. I found a porch door with intact glass a couple of months ago, and I'll be turning it into a cold frame on that side of the house. Plus, I'll be getting hazelnut and Nanking cherry shrubs soon to grow along that side and the back. Rains recently followed by a week of dry heat means I get to dig spaces for them tonight before the ground is too hard for my old bones to deal with. But when I ache enough to stop digging for the night, and I sit down on my vibrating heat pad and open up The Sims, I'll know that I'm watching my dreams grow.